What is up, everyone? Brandon First, aka First Report, representing the First Off the Bench podcast network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. Welcome into another edition of the NFL Weekly as we inch closer to the NFL season. It is July 14th. It is the last month that we will go without football in one form or another. It will be preseason, but as somebody who didn't get preseason last year and as a bettor, I'm kind of looking forward to a little bit of a warm up that preseason. So we'll get to that. And of course, when I say we, I am with my partner today, Raider Jim, not with us today, but we do have Coach Brandon Lupian. You can find Coach at Portland 76er on Twitter. Coach Lupian, how you doing tonight, sir?
Doing great. And even though physically Raider Jim isn't with us, he's always here in spirit with us. So we're looking forward to getting on today's show. It's been a while, and let's have at it, right? We're inching closer to football.
Exactly.
So it's an exciting time.
Yes, it is. And it's that time, the NFL is one of those few sports that you have to feel, the parity, the difference between the best and the worst is the closest. Now, there is definitely still a distance, but there's always shocks and surprises, and always seems to be someone new, of course, unless you're named Tom Brady, but there always seems to be someone else to challenge the GOAT. But that's where we're going to start, of course, as we get closer to in the GOAT's old division, I should say, the AFC East. We're going to start to, as we get closer to the NFL season, start previewing these divisions, division by division, as we start with the AFC East. And once again, as Coach Lupian said, Raider Jim isn't with us today physically, but he sent over a great little write-up that we're going to be using big time about all these teams. And we are going to start at the bottom, or what we expect to be the bottom. I think it's pretty safe to say the New York Jets are expected to be finishing fourth in this division, a division that could be somewhat wide open, but the Jets will not be a part of that conversation. If you're looking at the betting lines, they are 20-1 to win the AFC East, 50-1 to win the AFC, and a cool 100-1 to win the big one, the Super Bowl. Of course, obviously, the Jets are improved from last year, but they're definitely still going to have to only be content with being spoilers. You do have a situation early on with their schedule being a little easier than you would expect, or at least for them, they definitely see some games that if they play well, they can get some wins. Who knows? Maybe a 2-3, 3-2 start could be out there, but all eyes are not only on quarterback Zach Wilson, but also new coach Robert Saleh, coming over from the San Francisco 49ers, where he was a standout defensive coordinator, bringing that now to the head coaching side of things. And we've seen a lot of coordinators bring their craft to the head coach and struggle at it. Let's be honest. Norv Turner, Wade Phillips, fantastic coordinators, did not do well in terms of the kind of being the head honcho, where you're in charge of everything. It's a lot of delegation, a lot of things like that. For me, you have to figure out that, since Saleh is obviously a defensive mind, you got to look at the offensive coordinator here, because that's going to be a big fingerprint on Zach Wilson. And it is Mike LaFleur. Yes, his brother is, of course, in Green Bay as the head coach there. Yeah, and the last 4 years, he was the San Francisco's pass game coordinator. Now he's got a quarterback to kind of just mold into what he wants. Really exciting for the Jets, at least, kind of moving on from Sam Darnold. Got their guy in Zach Wilson, or at least I'm sure they would have rather had Lawrence, but it is what it is. They're looking forward to hopefully a improvement on a 2-14 season. But Coach, what are your thoughts on the Jets?
Well, I'll tell you for sure, my money will not be on the Jets. I like Robert Saleh. I like Robert Saleh as the hire. I think facing his defenses, or my Saints facing his defenses the last couple of seasons, two things stand out. the aggressive and physicality of the team, but also so those are two qualities that I know he'll probably bring, or he'll most likely bring to the Jets. Now, what you brought up in regards to the offensive coordinator side, the defensive coordinator, head coach, I like it more than if it's an offensive coordinator going into a head coaching position. I experienced that side of the ball, the offensive coordinating side, as successful as most of the defensive coordinators because I think they analyze things a little bit differently, a little bit more on the offensive side because I think they see the game a little bit different. So he's going to have because they got that rich-time offensive coordinator. They're in the big city, so they're already getting a lot of external pressures put on them. And it's unfortunate. I don't think Sam Darnold got a fair shake during his time there. But, I mean, hey, that's an organization in turmoil. And if that organization from the top to the head coach isn't straight, then I don't see very much success, especially immediate success moving forward. As far as Zach Wilson goes, dude's dynamic. Dude was dynamic against, let's just say, some of the lower tier FCS football teams in college. But, you know, he had an opportunity to do some things, and a team like Coastal Carolina didn't necessarily see it that way either. So, you know, he's a project, but he's a dynamic project, and I'm not too sure how many successful pieces they have around in total to really make any significant waves, especially first year. So, looking forward to the AFC East, but as far as the Jets go, I don't think they're going to be making too many waves.
No, I think the only way they affect the AFC East is an upset late in the season that knocks someone off of a first place or out of a playoff spot in this division. The one thing I will say with Zach Wilson, obviously you brought up playing in New York. Sam Darnold struggled with it, he struggled overall, and I'm sure that had a hand in it. But the one thing I will say, Zach Wilson, there are very few college experiences like being the quarterback at BYU. Maybe if you're on the East Coast, you don't quite understand it, but I mean, that school is, it's a religion almost. It really is kind of the banner school for the Mormon religion. Not quite, I guess maybe in the 60s and 70s, Notre Dame was kind of that, for the Catholic religion, not so much anymore. But my point being that, there were a lot of eyes on him already in college. Now, maybe not Broadway Joe, New York City, but still on that level of college athletics, kind of small town athletics in terms of relative to the NFL. That could maybe help in terms of, he's been under pressure. And you brought up a good point. This is a guy, if you think that a BYU quarterback goes number 2 overall, you got to think, wow, BYU went 12-1, 13-0, had a fantastic year. That wasn't really the case. They had a good year, but it wasn't, the old BYU days where they're churning out fantastic top tier quarterback talents into the NFL at a high rate. That wasn't the case. So we'll see how that goes. And I will say the Jets have at least moved in the right direction, knowing that they need to help the players around him. They had 3 picks in the first 34 of the draft. Obviously, they used one on Wilson. They also took offensive lineman Elijah Vera Tucker out of USC and Elijah Moore out of Ole Miss, a wide receiver. So giving him some weapons early.
Right.
Moving on to the New England Patriots. This is a team obviously lost their quarterback in Tom Brady, one of maybe the most ferocious competitors, serial winner wherever he goes, as he proved last year. And they replaced him with, Cam Newton, who is kind of the antithesis of that. He's definitely a talent, but hasn't exactly translated it into the wins. In terms of the futures bets for the Patriots, they are 7-2 to win the AFC East. They are 16-1 to win the AFC and 33-1 to win it all. I don't think either of those two are the last two, I should say, in terms of winning the AFC or the Super Bowl. You could throw some money there and hope that Belichick really has it running this year, but I don't think those are there. 7-2 to win the AFC. There are going to be plenty of Patriot fans out there that will tell you that's a steal. And they'll talk about all the players coming back from COVID last year. It definitely was a storyline. I think one of the biggest parts of this is Belichick's, want to prove that he can do it without Brady. I think the biggest fire that was lit under Belichick this offseason was Brady winning a Super Bowl. I'm really excited to kind of see how fired up, or I don't know if we'll see how fired up Belichick is, but how at least he changes this team, looking to really have a good year to prove that it wasn't all Brady. But Coach Lupian, I'll give you the honors to start things off on the Patriots.
If my numbers are right, and I hope Raider Jim's notes could correct me, I believe they had 9 guys take themselves out due to COVID. I think 8 of them were on the defensive side. And I don't recall New England being blown out of any game last year, regardless of who the quarterback was. So, like you said, that 7-2 number as a Patriot fan is a major steal, something to divulge deep into. I'm excited for this team. I think I'm last season and the season before, I've always been high on Buffalo. I could see the progression of Buffalo. But one man's opinion on Buffalo isn't Belichick's opinion on Buffalo. I don't necessarily think that it's a changing of the guard anymore. I think Belichick is prepared, and I think he prepared last season for when we got out of this. Yeah, even though we're still in a pandemic, I think he knew last year was a transition year of losing the GOAT, the biggest competitor under center, a transition year I got to deal with guys, copping out because of COVID or opting out because of COVID. Gives me an opportunity to see what I have in terms of our roster, see what I could develop in terms of our talent. And then when we get those guys back, see what we really could do with our depth and that developed talent. And really, really kind of put that stronghold on the AFC East. I'm not as convinced as I was before that it's Buffalo's division to win. And it's not just New England. I've been encouraged by what Coach Flores is doing in Miami as well, and we'll get to them shortly. But I think this division isn't going to be just up for grabs for Buffalo to reclaim. So really excited about what New England, and I'm more excited about New England now than in any time we've ever done a show in seasons past, and when we're on the radio station. I could care less about New England, but this New England team, I'm kind of excited. I'm really excited in regards to what Belichick has in store. I think this is the year to prove himself that he could do it without a Brady, as you mentioned. Last year, not the case. We got a Cam Newton that's going to be a second-year guy in the system, the Patriot way, And let's kind of give him credit, not for staying healthy, but for staying quiet. He's not making a lot of noise in the off season. He's kind of quiet, and you know, the old saying goes, "Real G's move in silence." He's been kind of silent. My guy Jameis in New Orleans has been kind of silent, and I like that old adage. I kind of move in my own silence. So to call him bought in, yeah, I believe he is. To say that he has something to prove along with his head coach, yeah, I believe he does. I'm excited for them, and I think this is going to be one hell of a division. I think it's a 3-team headed monster. And you mentioned when we were talking about the Jets are going to be possibly that deciding factor where they knock that one off, and instead of a 3-team race, it's a 2-team race because of that one week where they just kind of like flop on the Jets.
Yeah.
One of the 3, you know.
Because it's really easy to overlook the Jets. I mean, when you're putting things together, you know, these offensive coaches, these advanced scouts, it's kind of easy. It's, you know, if you're an English major and you know, you got your core classes, maybe you take a little less time on your English stuff because that's your thing. And you know, you skip on that a little bit and you focus on the math and, you know, other things. It's kind of the same way that, oh, you know what, we don't have to scout, excuse me, we don't have to scout the Jets the same way we scout these other teams. And, you know, Robert Saleh will have something waiting for him at the end of the year. And before you know it, you have to face the fans going, yeah, the New York Jets are the reason we didn't make the playoffs or we didn't win this division, which I don't think anyone in this division wants to be in. Obviously, I think one of the biggest elephants in the room for the Patriots is Mac Jones. And do we see him? How soon we see him? Because I do think, at least for the moment, Cam Newton, unless Mac either comes in and just blows people away in training camp or vice versa, and Cam Newton just can't do it, which I actually don't think will happen. But I think in a perfect world, Belichick can rely on Cam Newton to start every game this year, and they can kind of mold Mac Jones into a starter eventually. I think he needs a year, or at least it would benefit him. But there are going to be people in New England and around football that if this team struggles early on and Cam Newton struggles, they're going to start calling for Mac Jones. And I don't even think Bill Belichick will be, you know, silent to that. He'll have to listen at some point because, look, he's not getting any younger. I talked about it. I really do think he wants one more just to kind of prove he can do it without Brady. And the one thing, a lot of this can be attributed to the fact the Patriots were missing, like Coach Lupian said, 8 of those 9 stars on defense. Getting Devontae Hightower back is huge. Having Stephon Gilmore, arguably the best cornerback in all of football, back, ready to roll. And they really did struggle last year against the run. But they addressed that need, or at least attempted to address that need in the second round when they bring in Christian Barmore, the big D tackle out of Alabama. That's showing you right there that, you know, hey, we found an issue, or we had a hole, and it's easily explained. Don't get us wrong, you know, but at the same time, you got 8 players coming back. That's a lot of rust. No matter what they were doing in the offseason, or during that time in COVID, nothing can really prepare you for, you know, this now extended NFL season. So there's going to be some ring rust there, or some field rust that they're going to have to deal with. But I agree with you. This is a 3-team race. And like I said, if the Jets have any fingerprint on who wins this division, it will come late in the year when they spoil it for somebody. And who knows? Hopefully that's a money line that we can cash, because I do think it will happen at some point. Maybe not in this division exactly, but I do think the Jets will score a couple kind of surprising wins late in this one. So,
you know, I'm glad you brought up. Sorry. I'm glad you brought up Mac Jones, because it's kind of scary, eerie, like the way he just fell to them, as if the stars are lining up for Belichick again. And yeah, I mentioned Cam and how he's kind of been oblivious all offseason. Then you got a guy that did what he did at Alabama that just kind of falls into place for Belichick to have that heir apparent. Like, it's kind of scary, eerie, stars align that happened. And all of a sudden we're getting into the season and it's like, yep. Like there's really something going on over there in New England. So yeah, I'm glad you brought him up. Perfect prelude to finish up on.
Yeah, and it's a nice segue also into who Mac Jones succeeded at Alabama. It was, of course, Tua and the Miami Dolphins. Looking ahead at them, they are 13-4 to win the AFC East, 15-1 to win the AFC, and 30-1 to win the Super Bowl. Pretty much just slightly better odds in all of those categories than the Patriots. Most people think this team will be just maybe a little bit better than the Patriots as they were last year, 10-6. Had a good year. Obviously, some situations late that I think it was a late loss to the Steelers that really upended their season. But it does start with Tua. What are you going to get from Tua? There's plenty of people on both sides that are going to tell you, this kid's a sleeping monster. He's going to go on and do amazing things. And there are people on the other side that think that, he's overrated. He's a bust already, blah, blah, blah. And there are people in the middle. There are people all over the Tua spectrum, if you will. Myself personally, look, I think if there's one thing that I think all of those people can agree on is that it's just a little too early to tell. He did come into a season, obviously, where, hey, look, it was a season unlike any other in terms of no fans, anything like that. You had to deal with the COVID situation. You had to deal with an off season of Zooms, if you will, probably not meeting a lot of his teammates in a football scenario for a couple months. I mean, maybe just weeks or so out of the NFL season, he's actually throwing balls to his soon-to-be wide receivers. This year will not be the case, obviously. Definitely a more traditional offseason. But another question, obviously, is the health. Jacoby Brissett was brought in. Not the end-all. I think if he ends up on the team or starting a majority of the games, it will be a bit struggle for the Dolphins. But at the end of the day, I think the Dolphins, Patriots, and Bills, like we talked about, are going to be that team. Those teams, I should say. We talked about Stephon Gilmore for the Patriots. You have to talk about Xavier Howard for the Dolphins. I believe he led the league in interceptions last year and maybe even the year before. He's definitely not only one of those lockdown corners that's going to, break up passes. He's going to change the game and really flip the game on its head once again. Brian Flores' fingerprints have been on this team since the beginning. I mean, this is a guy who was almost too good his first year, and they almost, had too good of a record. Because if you remember going into his year, they said, hey, get the number 1 overall pick, get Tua, and you'll be happy. Obviously, Joe Burrow came out, Tua got his injury. So the Dolphins, I think at 4 or 5, had a good, better year than expected, still ended up with Tua. Brian Flores is very similar, I believe, to kind of a Robert Saleh right now, where I think bringing in a defensive guy from a winning franchise or a very successful franchise, I think that's going to only do wonders for this team. But the Dolphins are a team to keep an eye on. I don't quite know if they can run down the Bills in this division. I still think the Bills are the class, but the Dolphins are definitely on the rise, especially after a 10-6 year last year, even though, of course, it could have gone a lot better towards the end. Coach Lupian, what are your thoughts on the Miami Dolphins?
I love Brian Flores. I'm in the middle on a Tua Tagovailoa. Can't even say it right.
That's why I just stuck with Tua.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of Tua. I don't know what to expect out of him, to be honest with you. I think his numbers at Alabama were a product of the system. I'm not a scout, so I don't know the advanced tools that the scouts see in regards to him, other than his tenacity as a competitor and his win-loss record, and what he's did his freshman year, getting Alabama that he didn't even play the majority of the season, but he got him that national title. So there's a lot of ifs and or buts with Tua, and I'm just caught up in the middle. Your comparison to Salah to Flores, he's brought toughness, he's brought accountability, he's brought a demeanor and an attitude that, no, I'm not going to tank for Tua. We're going to go out there, we're going to play, we're going to compete like men, and Tua falls in their lap. Hey, we got it. We got the kid anyway. Don't tell me how to coach my team ownership or general manager. We're going to play my way. That's what you hired me for. You may think that my hire wasn't supposed to happen or was a joke or whatever, but no, I'm a man. I'm going to prove myself, and my team's going to prove my philosophy to the point they have. And I only see this team rising. Does the impact of how well this team does fall on a Tua? Yeah, it does. Because the defense is going to be there because it's been there. It's proven. They got a weapon for Tua, an old teammate for Tua. So the pressure is going to be on that young man's shoulders. How many healthy seasons has this kid played? Right? I can't count one.
It starts with a Z.
Yeah. So add more. And he could have that Hawaiian style laid back attitude about things and then be able to flip it and become the most competitive of all competitors, right? But, if you can't stay on the field, then you can't have the impact that your team needs. Hearing him in trade discussions this offseason, scary to me. And I don't know where those come from. But it's scary to me. That's why I'm like in the middle. Unfortunately, it's part of the business. The kid has to go through it in a young career. But I mean, if he could put business and personal feelings aside, it shouldn't affect. We will see. We will see. Like I said, I think it's a three-headed race for this division, and New England's in it. Miami will be there. And other than that flub late last season, they were there. Probably not division contenders, but playoff contenders.
Yeah. Yeah, it was definitely the Bills, the class all last year, and that's where we are moving on to, of course. There are three things that I've known about Coach Lupian pretty much since I've known him. Number one, very, very successful tennis coach. Number two, monster Saints fan. And number three, huge Josh Allen fan. I mean, I think even before this guy stepped on the field in an NFL game, Coach Lupian was singing his praises, and full credit to him because he stuck with him even after a rough first year. But, Coach Lupian really did call it. Yeah.
Hey, no, his first 2 years in the league, yeah, they're growing pains. But what I saw this kid do at Wyoming, woof, man, like, talk about projectability, and I hope Zach Wilson has that same kind of path line or timeline, because the intangibles, they're there. They were there for Josh, for Allen at Wyoming. They're there for Zach Wilson at BYU. But Josh Allen, I saw him do it like freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, come out, struggle, grow. Last year, boom. And I don't want to compare, but I'm going to the Bills winning the division like in a default year because of COVID. Like, I consider the Dodgers World Series like a default, like not even a default, but like a asterisk win, a World Series. I don't think that Buffalo deserves an asterisk because of COVID. Because of Josh Allen and the progression of the team and ownership's credit sticking with the hire, right? I don't know the head coach's name, but that dude was in the hot seat. But they just kept with him, and you know what? You win a division, and you make a little splash in the playoffs, and then you kind of show your immaturity against that top tier team. And I think if ever all our listeners want to go back and listen to week 1 through the playoffs they lost, I always talk to Bills about their maturity. Even in this offseason, I talked about their maturity. And we will see if you win learning lessons and you definitely lose learning lessons, and we'll see if they learn their lessons. Getting Josh Allen a Stephon Diggs last year, huge pickup, you know? And that just kind of gave him that go-to guy. Not that he didn't have offensive weapon threats before, but like a guy like Diggs changes games. Like he's definitely an attitude adjustment kind of guy for the team. He's definitely a game-changing kind of guy for the team. He's definitely like a spiritual, like not religious spiritual, but like competitive spirit on another level that certain teams need, you know? And he was that addition in the offseason, and they benefited from the fruits of their off-season labor, the development of Allen, the addition of Diggs and other pieces, especially on the defensive end, you know, and they were moments away from Kansas City and the Super Bowl, but I think the moment was just too large at that moment. We'll see if it is at this moment.
Yeah, it's a great point to bring up Stephon Diggs. I think one of the biggest keys with Stephon Diggs coming with the targets or the weapons that have been brought in or drafted that came into Buffalo prior to Diggs. I don't think they were as frustrated, or maybe they didn't. Maybe they took Allen's talents for granted, because I know Stephon Diggs, coming from and okay, yeah, look, I'll be the first one to admit, probably one of the biggest Kirk Cousins bashers out there, but it's easy to do it. And, it's factual as well. There's a reason I call him Captain Overthrow. This is a guy that is, it's frustrated a lot of wide receivers to the point of, yeah, okay, look, Stephon Diggs, very demonstrative, obviously big time competitor, and is going to show his emotions on the field. You never once saw that on the field with Josh Allen, even in situations where, believe me, Josh Allen wasn't perfect last year. He didn't hit Stephon Diggs perfectly, but my point being that Stephon Diggs understands, look, okay, he missed that throw, but I know the next 5 he's going to make. That's kind of the opposite that he was dealing with Stephon in Minnesota. He'd be happy when he just got 1, because then he knew, okay, well, the next 5 or 6 are going to be bad. So I think he's that kind of first target that's really finally bought in to say, look, what do you want me to do? I'll do whatever you want, because I just want to win, and I want a quarterback that can be successful. But, I'm going to give credit here to Raider Jim and his little write-up. He brought up 2 big kind of factors that may, I guess, trip these guys up or trip the Bills up. And the big one is the run game, or lack thereof. Now, obviously, look, Josh Allen, I think he has more rushing touchdowns in the last 3 years than Ezekiel Elliott. That's fantastic. However, it's going to be difficult to win Super Bowls when your top rusher is your quarterback for a multitude of reasons. And I would say the number one being health. Even if he doesn't have a history of it, all it takes is one bad tackle, and things have been changed up or turned on their heads. So they need to figure that out. Zach Moss, Devin Singletary tandem, like most teams do. They're going to have to produce more this year. Absolutely no doubt about it. And the second part of it, the schedule. It's been a while since the Buffalo Bills have won the division. Well, guess what? You know what your reward is for winning your division? You're getting all the first place teams in around the rest of your conference. And now that extra 17th game is a team in the opposite conference in this random division that will continue to rotate over the next 4 years. But anyway, so that just tells you they have a much tougher schedule than they're, I guess, used to, or what they normally have. So the Bills they're not going to have too many of those gimme games. And we kind of talked about it earlier. Maybe the first Jets game could be considered a gimme, but late in the year, the Jets are going to be, I believe, a team that will get better, will figure things out throughout the year, whether it's with Zach Wilson or just them figuring out how to be a team under Saleh. I can't wait to see, honestly, this division, I think, will be the most wide open with respect to those three teams. There might be other divisions that 1 through 4, there's a closer distance, but you could make a case really for all three of those teams that we just talked about lately to win the division. And I think there's plenty of money to be made, especially considering, look, if you are all in on the Bills, you're going to have to pay money to make money in that situation. They're 2 to 3 to win the division. So more power to you. But I do think there's more value looking elsewhere in those other two teams, because once again, it could be a team, it could be a stretch where the Bills have to go to Kansas City and to Tennessee in back-to-back weeks. That's early in the year, but that could be a difference. They go 0-2 there. Who knows? 13-5, or I guess, 13-4 may win the division this year, and you're already halfway to that number. So that's going to be tough looking ahead, not even dealing with those other teams. But that is all we have for the AFC East. Coach Lupian, anything else to add or final thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to apologize to Sean McDermott, because that's the head coach's name. So, I mean, I think just that, because they deserved everything that they got last year, and I just didn't want to end this show on a brain fart, realizing his name. So, congrats to him last year, and I think they still continue to have a uphill battle this year. But yeah, that's AFC East in a nutshell. Looking forward to it, and I hope it comes faster and sooner than not. So, final thoughts. Hey, let's get on to the next division.
Yeah, the sooner we finish this up, the sooner we can talk about game lines, things like that. But once again, I'll throw one out there for you. I don't know if the line is moved, but week 1, Atlanta take -3 over the Eagles. That's an easy winner there. You might have to buy the half point, but I'll give you that one pretty much every podcast if I remember. But my final thoughts, I think kind of focusing on Buffalo like you did, one of the biggest winners, not only, in the offseason or whatever, but coming into this year are going to be the Buffalo fans, because as a Padre fan, it was bittersweet last year to see this team win the division, but not be able to go see this team or have the fans in the stands. It was kind of the same thing for the Bills, two, much maligned franchises. Now, of course, I wish the Padres had back-to-back World Series or those where they lost, but still, plenty of heartbreak in those two. But last year for the Bills fans, and I know they got in there later, but at small capacity, but I can't wait to see Bills Mafia in full force with a good football team, because you say whatever you want about the Bills fans, blah, blah, blah. There is not a more diehard, more devoted fan base in the entire, I think, all of sports, really, when it comes to realness. There might be other, bigger fan bases, faker fan bases, and I'm talking to you, Yankee and Cowboy fans. But when it comes to the Bills, those guys, look, if you're going to jump through a table in freezing degree weather while your team is throwing JP Lossman and, Chan Gailey out there, and they're still selling that place out, more power to you. And now they finally have a team that I think is going to get closer and closer to the Super Bowl over these next few years. Really excited to see how that goes. And always cheering, especially for our friend, the Bills backer himself, Joe Pinella. One of the OGs of the Great Friends Sports Network. So with that, thank you all so much for listening to this week in the NFL Weekly, presented by the First Off the Bench Podcast Network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. It is time for you all to go wash your hands and stop hating everybody. We'll talk to you all very soon. Take care.